You know what? It doesn't even matter. Just cut it.
All right, everyone. Hi, how you doing? This is our first episode, The Cut, Ashtabula's first podcast about people for people. My name's Tom Roth. I'm here with Anthony Aquendo, my co-host, and our very first guest on this show. We're going to introduce him right quick here. His name, John Butchko. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be episode 1.
Well, we're happy to have you, man. We're really excited to get you in here. We're really excited to kind of talk about your story. That's what this whole podcast is about. It's about telling stories about people, where they're at, where they're going, where they've come from. I think it's really imperative, especially in today's society, to get these stories out there because I think people don't like anything more than hearing something that they can relate to, right? They want to hear maybe about trials and tribulations so that they can relate it to their own life, or maybe apply a lesson that someone else has so that they might be able to do something that person's done, or maybe do it better, or maybe not do what that person did. So the one reason that we really started this was for all the aforementioned reasons, but also to get these stories out and make it so that everyone can relate. I'm kind of rambling.
You're good, man.
All right.
Let's cut this fan, though.
All right.
Cut the fan. Cut that other one, too. No, leave the light. Leave the
Okay,
light.
leave the light.
Yeah.
Be like hustle and flow in here.
Yeah, we're gonna be a little shaky first. You know, we're gonna work out some bugs. This is the first episode. We're just glad to have you guys here. We're glad to have John here. And then John, whenever Tom has a seat, if you could just tell us in your own words who you are, what you do. Just kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself.
I'm John Butchko. I'm currently a teacher at Buckeye Local Schools. I'll be moving to Braden Middle School this year. I think I'm probably most well known in the area, having spent 3 years as a head football coach at Edgewood. I'm originally from Canton, Central Catholic graduate, West Liberty State College graduate, extremely passionate about football and education, and I think, like, personally, I'm a single father to a 13-year-old daughter who I'm sure is going to watch this. So, hi, Lily. Sorry you couldn't come tonight, but I'm just excited to be a part of this, and I always like to help friends that have big goals for themselves, and I'm very humbled to be the first guest that you all have here.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when Anthony and I were starting this, we kind of went through and we made a list of people like, hey, who can we get to tell a good, compelling story, right? And you were the first person that came to my mind. There's so many different things about you over the course of the past 2 years that I've had the pleasure of getting to know you that I think lend themselves well to a podcast like this. So what we're going to do first is we're going to, like Anthony said, tell us about you, but you told us a little bit about like where you started, everything like that, but who are you as a person? What did you do in your earlier life that brought you here?
Well, I think very early on, I'm a lifelong sports guy, sports fan.
What's your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is football. I mean, that was my first love. I grew up with an uncle that was an All-American in college, and he was like my older brother. So probably from as far back as I could remember, I was following him around. Football, and he played baseball and basketball and track, and I learned a lot of things just by chasing my uncle around. And then I got to become a player of my own, up through the youth and the high school days, and eventually into college. And I know a lot of people outgrow sports. I think I'm just probably a guy that never grew past the age of like 15.
You're from Ohio?
I'm from Canton. I'm from Canton. I grew up in Starr County, and
Browns fan?
Browns fan. I actually skipped school.
Thank God.
I actually skipped school for the supplemental draft my junior year. I had my mom write a note, and we went down to the Civic Center and watched them draft Jim Pine when they came back. I was in the
There's a name.
I was in the 8th grade when they left, and my teacher, I bumped into her a couple times since. She put it on the news, and she was crying when that happened. So I definitely a Browns fan, throughout my, especially as I've gotten older. And expect big things out of that organization, and we get let down every year.
We absolutely well. One of the biggest things. I mean, this isn't a sports podcast per se, but that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it. I mean, come on. I mean, we're from the Cleveland area. Biggest thing right now is Baker Mayfield traded to the Carolina Panthers, where he's going to start hopefully over Sam Darnold. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm a huge Baker Mayfield fan. I know he struggled last year, and I thought probably about the midseason point last year, I thought a lot of the problems lied, with Kevin Stefanski. I thought, and I would talk to people at work or whatever else, and I thought he had like the equivalent of like writer's block as the play caller goes. We weren't, I don't think, doing the things that Baker does well. He's not a very big guy, so you had to find a window for him to throw the ball to. And he'd be up under center, 2 or 3 tight ends in the formation. I know the Odell Beckham videos that came out, painted a certain narrative, but I really think that a lot of the problems, from my opinion of it, went to a lot more of the scheme stuff than Baker. But I'm a huge Baker fan. I think he's always been competitive. I was a huge fan at Oklahoma. He played with a certain swagger. We all remember the Kansas incidents, which endeared us to him, and planting the flag at Ohio Stadium, which
Still hurts.
even though as a Buckeyes fan, we didn't like. You had to respect it. So I think that he'll have a nice rebirth down in Carolina.
So I read, or my wife's a huge Browns fan. See, I'm an Arizona Cardinals fan. She sent me a link the other day that said that Deshaun Watson is possibly going to miss the entire year. Is that still like I haven't looked into it too much, but I mean, why would they trade him if they knew Deshaun wasn't even going to be able to play? Who are they going to have start QB now?
Well, I don't think they vetted it very seriously. There's a lot of investigation, a lot of intel. I've been privy to some people that have been scouted by the NFL and just how comprehensive things usually are for them. I think someone somewhere along the way really dropped the ball when it came to vetting Deshaun Watson. You hear 4 games, you hear 6 games, you hear a season, you hear indefinitely. And, as a Browns fan, a guy that cheers for the bland orange helmets, you look at what they did to Josh Gordon, and that is what scares me all the time. You look at some of the other, precedents in the NFL, and I'm not all that optimistic until I see a firm number of 4 or 6. And then they were pretty well, tied to him as soon as they picked him. $230 million. I know it's kind of backloaded, but you pretty much now were saying that there's no value to this organization for Baker Mayfield, and you want somebody to pay top dollar for it. The other 31 teams just called their bluff. I mean, the Browns did that to themselves.
Absolutely.
And again, they're supposed to be the experts, so maybe they know better than I do, but I just think they mismanaged that about every way you could mismanage it.
Well, it almost seemed to me like when everything was happening that the process essentially was, because they said that Jimmy Haslam and Dee Haslam went down to talk to him and everything, and it almost seemed to me like Jimmy Haslam's like sitting there like right across from him, like I'm talking to the camera, and that's Deshaun Watson, and I'm Jimmy Haslam. Hey, Deshaun, so we know you got some allegations against you. Did you do that shit? And then Deshaun Watson just goes, nope. And then Jimmy Haslam goes, cool, here's a check for $230 million. You know what I mean? Like you're right. Like, there's certain processes that you have to vet, and, I'm not an expert in anything that went down. I truly feel that, all 22 women probably weren't telling the truth, but 22 women didn't lie. You know what I mean? So my thing is the onus was on them to maybe have a backup plan in case this didn't happen. Maybe talk to Baker Mayfield and be like, hey, you're not our guy going forward. We've got our guy, right? But what you can do and what we're going to do is put you in a situation to succeed right now, so that we owe that to you. So what you can do is we exemplify your talents, we display you to the league, and then come week 8, if Deshaun's able to come play, you're in a position where we can trade you. You can go to a situation that's good for you, and we can get something in return, And that didn't happen. It's like you said, 31 teams called their bluff, and now Carolina, who isn't known for being a savvy front office, really just showed everyone, like, hey, not only are we going to give you a 5th-round pick, but you got to pay half of $20 million.
That's crazy.
You're getting an extreme value, I think. And I don't really think there's a way Carolina comes out of this looking bad. The Browns definitely could. If he goes down there and is comeback player of the year, somehow works his way into the MVP, discussion, or in a couple years of sustained success. But I don't think that situation could have ever been rectified in Cleveland. The fanfare that Deshaun came in with, there's a lot of macho, there's a lot of ego in the NFL and in all professional sports. I don't think that, the fanfare that Deshaun Watson brought with him, though, that situation could have ever been resolved with Baker Mayfield being a Cleveland Brown.
But never. I mean, you have 2 alpha dogs in the room, and I have 3 dogs, right? And I've got one, Frank. He's the alpha of the house, but the baby dog now wants to think he's the alpha dog, and I'll tell you what, it's a fight club in here sometimes, man, and that's what I envisioned the Browns locker room would have been, and it's just, as a football coach, that, but also, you were a player. You played high school ball, you played college ball, and then you went into the professional ranks. So when you were talking just now, like earlier about Baker Mayfield talking about schemes, windows, his size, everything, like, it was very much coach speak, but it was also speak of a man who's been in situations like that. So tell us about your early days, high school to college, to your semi-pro. How'd that all give us the JB timeline.
Well, I played at Central Catholic for an absolute living legend in Lowell Kleinfelder. In my sophomore year, we played in probably one of the toughest schedules you could imagine and qualified for the postseason. And a freak snow and ice storm hit the Akron Rubber Bowl. Our quarterback broke his thumb, and I was thrust into action for 3 quarters of relief. And we lost. We lost to Manchester when we very well could have won a state championship that season. We actually missed the postseason my final 2 years. We played a really just crazy independent schedule. They won it my first year of college, which kind of sits funny. My fall semester as a true freshman. Those guys that I had just played with are hoisting a state championship trophy. But I think that taught me a lot about windows in life, like. The time to succeed and the avenues to success are sometimes very small. A team that just missed the playoffs, pretty well waltzes through the postseason and wins the state championship the following year. I originally signed, though, coming out of high school with Tiffin University, and I tell people all the time, I don't know that I've, and no disrespect anywhere else that I ever played, ever been around more talented people at one time. I mean, we had the quarterback guru, George Whitfield, was our starting quarterback my true freshman year. Todd Goebel was my position coach. He's now at NC State. Willie Spencer, who had a academic and registration thing, but he had some tryouts in the NFL, and we had just a amazingly talented group of people up there. But I was only there for 1 semester. I spent a year at Malone afterwards, and then I found my home at West Liberty State in West Virginia. I knew that I wanted to get into coaching as soon as my time as a player was done, as my education was complete. I really wanted to, if I could have drawn it up perfectly, been a GA coming out of college. That just never materialized. That's a hard situation to get into, especially when your school doesn't have a graduate school. As West Liberty didn't back then. But so I immediately got into high school coaching. I went back to Central Catholic High School. We had a really great season my first year as an assistant, played deep into the playoffs. Then I went to Timken High School, which is now closed in Canton. So I spent a year at both of those. But when I was at Timken, a college teammate of mine, Nate DeGasperis, had gotten the head coaching job at the Marion Mayhem in the Continental Indoor Football League, like the AA, single A baseball version of the Arena Football League. And he took me with him as his offensive coordinator. And it happened to be like one of the most fortuitous bounces of my life. Nate and I were roommates, remain good friends to this day. And at 24 years old, I was directing the offense, and a lot of the players were older than me. And we actually signed a quarterback really, really late in the preseason. He's now, or at last I checked, he was on the Big Ten Network. Stanley Jackson from Ohio State. That was our quarterback with the Mayhem, and he did an amazing job down there. And I think I learned a lot, from working with Stan. I was still young and trying to find my way in coaching, and Stan had spent some time in the NFL, the Canadian League. He's a tremendous role model for people in his personal life, with his faith and his convictions. And I knew that if I was going to coach a player of that caliber, I really had to be on it. And Stan was extremely patient with me as a young coach. And then I parlayed that into a head coaching job at the age of 24 at Morrill Ridgedale High School in Marion County. And then I've had some other stops along the way, back to Central Catholic, went to Sandy Valley where we, really grew as a program. And then, of course, my time at Edgewood.
So you were talking about you were an offensive coordinator at 24 years old, and you had guys older than you that you were directing. You're seeing that a lot in pro and college sports now. So you're seeing the most prevalent answer right now being Sean McVay, right? So McVay goes in, he becomes the head coach of the St. Louis, now Los Angeles Rams, right? He has Aaron Donald, Jared Goff, Tavon Austin, Todd Gurley. At that time, there were so many players that were high caliber, right? But they never got over that hump. So then this youthful guy comes in, and he gets the most out of them, makes Jared Goff look damn near like, Tom Brady that year. Goff was insane. When you're that young, 24 for you, McVay I think was in like late 20s. How can you, as a younger coach, get the most out of players who are older than you? How can you get someone who's older than you, who's been doing this longer than probably you've been alive, to listen to you and say, all right, this dude knows what he's talking about. I got to listen to him, and it's going to make me successful. How did you do that?
Well, I think the first thing you had to do was let go of every, you're going to lord over the professional athletes that you coach. And again, mine were at the lower level, but we had some, that spent some time in Canada, some that would go to the AFL for a tryout or be gone for a couple of weeks. But your main thing was just focus on it like a job. There wasn't a whole lot of teaching. It wasn't like when you coach in high school and you have to teach a freshman how to line up and how to sprint off of the ball. These guys got a paycheck to do it. It was all, I shouldn't say all, but it was mostly game plan specific. Focus on the things that you hope to do, in the upcoming game or for the upcoming season, and be honest. I think athletes, whether they're in high school, grade school, or low levels of professionals, I would imagine all the way up to the NFL, they want somebody that's going to be honest with them, make them a better player, and show them areas they can improve. And on my side of the ball, on the offensive side, we had very little turnover. Defensively, we moved guys around, and I know all the rules of the indoor game and the arena game are scheduled or set up for the offense to succeed. That's why people are there. But we had very, very little turnover. And if we made a move, as we evaluated players, we wanted to find a person with winning habits. Whether it was something they did in their personal or professional life, or their college football life, or some other professional league life. We wanted to find people that could make us better because, again, they had winning habits. And that was really what we kept it centered on. And it was awesome, working for and with my roommate. We would talk about things, late at night. We were down there isolated. It was just he and I in our apartment, and we could bounce ideas off of one another, as frequently as you wanted. And, we never really shut it off. And I think you can do that when you're young. I don't know if I could do that right now, but we could do that when we were young. And, again, it always centered back to being honest with them. And it was honestly weird every time, after practice, they'd have somewhere the players had to appear, or we had to go with them, and you'd sit down and I drank beer back then, have a beer with one of your players, or eat some wings with some of the guys that you coached, because that's not what you can do in the high school game at all. And I think it made me a better coach when I went back to high school sports. Not that you could interact with them after practice, but if you ever followed, players I had around as an assistant or as a head coach, I would just be honest with them and they might not always like the answer. And of course, we butted heads at different times. But I think our relationships in the time since, some of them have graduated and are, gone on to other things in their lives. The frequency that we talk, I think we had, a pretty positive and pretty appropriate relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have a lot more coming on this podcast. We're going to have John back here in a minute. We're going to take a quick break. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this video for not just today, but for every future episode of The Cut. We have a lot of great content coming. We'll be right with you guys. All right, everybody, welcome back to The Cut, episode 1 with John Butchko. You got me, Tom Roth, here. You got Anthony Aquendo, their co-host, co-owner of the podcast. Like I said at the beginning of the show, we made this podcast to give stories about people. About people, for people is kind of the tagline of this podcast. And one of the most appropriate things, I think, when you're making a podcast is to get something genuine out there. Get something that people can tell isn't filtered. And that's really what we want. We don't want to filter anything. We want to make it unfiltered. We want it to be raw. We want everyone to be, or not everyone, but people to relate to it on certain different levels. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to get back in with John. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel here on youtube.com/thecutpodcast. I don't know what
right here in the middle.
I don't know what the logo's going to be. Sorry, guys, still figuring out all the cameras and stuff. We got like 3, and I'm used to just a webcam. So, back in my younger days of podcasting, that's far gone. But, so now we're going to hop back into it now. So, John, we were talking a lot about you as a player, and we got into you as a coach. So, we talked about what got you into coaching. But now what I want to get into is, who was your inspiration? We talk about a lot of coaches right now, like, say, Matt Patricia, right? Matt Patricia comes from that Belichick line. He's got that hard-ass attitude. He wasn't popular with the Lions players, but they were a younger team. They weren't used to success, but he took that inspiration from Bill Belichick, right? Mm-hmm. Ryan Day comes in, Ohio State's head coach, obviously took inspiration from Urban Meyer and other men he's been around. Luke Fickell obviously has taken inspiration from the great coaches at Ohio State. Who inspired not only you as a coach with the X's and O's, but as a man?
Well, I was fortunate again to have played for Coach Kleinfelder at Central Catholic, and along with him, you can't mention him without saying Doug Miller or Jeff Lindesmith. So I had 3 guys with a combined 120 years of coaching experience.
Jesus Christ!
That I got to spend a lot of time with in every stage of life. Starting as a ball boy, through being a player, and then coaching right with them as an assistant coach. So the way that they went about their craft and Lowell was super prepared at all times. Lindesmith, he was the players' coach, the people's champ. You could talk to him, and always a friendly ear. And Coach Miller, he was obviously, baseball is what he's most well known for. But when he coaches anything, you always hear people say he makes kids listen to rules. He keeps the athlete at the center of everything. So I tried to combine, what I saw every day. From those 3 guys, I know you probably want a more visible one, and I had a chance to, meet a lot of, notable Division I football coaches as they came through to recruit my best friend. And I just remember being like a junior in high school, and Michigan State was really heavy on him, and I got to meet Nick Saban a bunch of times. Nice. And I saw, not the guy you see on TV, but he's recruiting, my best friend who I spent a lot of time with, and how he was able to be almost 2 or 3 distinct people. I thought that was very impressive. And as you're starting to make decisions, and I was like 15 or 16 at the time, that was somebody I thought, man, I'd like to do that for a living. I know he gets a lot of credit, now with the machine Alabama's turned into, but, watching him interact with, my best friend and his family and come and visit us at the school or see him in East Lansing, was certainly something I thought I could be, down the road. You see your coaches in high school, and it's all so rigid, so formal, so, like a script being followed every year. But you see these guys when they can break script, through recruiting, through getting to know families, and I wanted to, probably combine a lot of those things that I saw, throughout my time, coming up as a player and as watching, Dan get recruited.
So here's a question that I just find fascinating. So somebody had mentioned the other day it was on Facebook. But when you're doing something long enough, like you're talking about Nick Saban and your friend, interacted with Nick Saban and, getting recruited and all that. It's crazy when you do something long enough and you become consistent and proficient at it, you're not too far from the people who are fucking excelling at it at the highest levels. Like, it's crazy to me, like, that you're even talking about. So I got a buddy who I was in the Marine Corps with, and his brother actually is in the NFL. He got drafted by the LA Rams, and he's moved around to the Arizona Cardinals, Jacksonville, but shout out to Farrell Cooper. But yeah, no, it's crazy when you interact and you're in a field for so long and you're doing it and you're proficient and you just stay passionate and consistent about it. You really aren't far from the people who are fucking doing it at the elite level. That's crazy to me that we're even talking about, people we know or associate with a close mutual friend who are doing it at that elite level. Like, that's insane to me. So for you to be in Ashtabula County and like coaching these kids who hopefully one day will make it to that elite level, like that's fucking dope.
Well, yeah, and anytime I've talked with an athlete, whether here or anywhere else, I always tell them, like, if you meet enough people, and I really, like, have always just enjoyed meeting and talking to other people, like, you realize that a lot of successful people had, like, one little chance thing go their way. Like, it's crazy, how often that happens compared to, like we talked about LeBron off camera. I watched him play as a freshman in high school, and I was seeing a girl from up there, and she said, "You got to see this kid play basketball." And every gym he ever walked into, he was the best athlete. Like, that's really, really the minority percentage-wise. When it's, it's probably one really good bounce here or there, or you play really well when somebody's there to see you. That probably happens a lot more than something like a LeBron situation, like like a Zion Williams situation, which we talked about. That it's like a good game here or there, or you mature at the right time, or just some crazy,
Kenny Lofton Jr. Kenny Lofton Jr. We were talking about that off camera, man.
It's just some crazy timing thing really helps a lot of people, and we put those people on pedestals that we see on TV a lot, and I'm sure that they're great at their jobs. I haven't spent a minute in the Alabama program or at any practices, but I'm sure they do a wonderful job. That you take like the worst team in Division I, and it probably doesn't look all that different. Maybe the players aren't as good, or they're not as deep in one spot or the other, but like they probably know at least some way to get on the path to being successful, and that's been one of the biggest eye openers of things that I've seen, as I've traveled around throughout, my adult life.
So the one thing, like when we're talking about, Alabama, for instance, those kids being around Nick Saban, it's from the corniest movie in the world, but the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, right? So there's a line that has stuck with me my entire life, and it's the Oriental gentleman in there. I don't remember what was his name.
Tom. I don't think Oriental is the right phrase to use anymore. I think that is I think that's like forbidden. But
all right, well, I apologize.
The
I didn't mean to
Asian guy?
offend anyone. The Asian guy. There we go. The Asian gentleman, Jan or Yang or
I don't know.
I don't remember. But anyway, he's talking to the white trash kid that does the Tokyo drifting, and he says to him, "You are who you surround yourself with, right? Like, you are a product of everyone that you put around yourself." So we look at someone like Michael Vick, right? Favorite football player of all time, piece of shit human being, right? But he surrounded himself initially with dudes who were going to get him there, right? Then he gets there. He gets to Virginia Tech. He surrounds himself with his teammates. He balls out, goes to the NFL, number 1 overall pick. You know, Falcons, we know the story, right? He later in the ESPN 30 for 30, which is probably one of the best 30 for 30s I've ever seen.
That's a good one. A good, even though everybody can't make one in one part anymore, but that's a really good one.
He basically says exactly what the guy from Fast and Furious said. I became who I surrounded myself with. I wanted to get out of the hood so bad, but I went back to the hood, and I was with those guys again, and because I was around them, I made bad choices again, right? The Alabama guys. A lot of these kids in this social media era, in this era of knowing every fucking thing they do is about to be put on camera, right?
Oh, you got to be on your P's and Q's.
You have to be.
You have to be.
Nick Saban knows that, and that's why you never see a kid from Alabama get in trouble. If they do, that shit is done. That shit is out of the picture, right? Because he's going to snuff them sons of bitches out. But what I'm getting at is those kids know to be successful, they have to surround themselves with Nick Saban and the guys that he's with, because even if you aren't the starting linebacker that year, one day you might get a chance to start at Bama. And if you have a lick of talent and you went to Alabama, you're going to make it to the NFL. And those kids, that's what they want to do. That's 6 years old. Those kids want to do that, right? So you're absolutely right. Like, when you surround the people that they surround themselves with, it's imperative anymore. And what we're seeing now, especially in high school football, we're seeing a lot of this, in some areas you're seeing more of the me culture, right? You're seeing the star quarterback be Tate Martell, right? Tate Martell from was it Last Chance U on Netflix?
Well, yeah,
there's like 5 documentaries that he's in, and he wasn't relevant in any of them. But he's that all about me quarterback, right? He's all about himself. But then you see a guy like Nick Chubb, NFL running back now, probably the best running back Cleveland's ever had. Maybe not stats wise, but definitely character wise.
Yeah.
But Nick Chubb knew growing up, if I want to succeed, I got to keep my head down. I got to keep my mouth shut. I saw, it's not funny by any means. I'm not minimizing anything, but it said Nick Chubb made a statement on Deshaun Watson, and it's just the image, like the Browns image, and it just has 2 quotes, and that's it. And then it says Nick Chubb under there.
Sorry, I'm interrupting the podcast.
You need me? All right, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I'm back. Apologize. Had a bit of a emergency. R.I.P. to Oswald. Great rabbit. We'll miss you. But yeah, now let's get back.
That's crazy as fuck. That's a hell of a time for that to happen.
Yeah, like first podcast over here with Butch, Anthony in the house, and the rabbit died. So that was awful.
It's definitely gonna be a.
You got Google over there, man. Is that some kind of omen?
No, I think it's an omen. Oh, man. I hate right now that I'm laughing how my rabbit died.
Man, come on, man.
I feel it's just like,
you need a beer?
Huh?
You need a beer?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed, but I have a Mountain Dew, so I'm just gonna keep on chugging the Dew. I'm gonna do the Dew.
Mountain Dew might be worse than beer.
I mean, you don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't know any of that. But
that is a hell of a time, man. Condolences, bro.
Well, I appreciate it. He was a good rabbit. He was a good rabbit. He was sick, but we thought we had it under control. But circle of life.
Moment of silence for the rabbit.
Rest easy.
Rest easy, Oswald. We love you. Be good. We'll see you soon.
Carrot buffet in the sky.
Carrot buffet in the sky, yeah. So we were talking before I had to get up and all that happened about being the sum of your parts, and Alabama has that sum of the parts. So now, you being a head coach, you had to instill a culture. You had to instill not just in them how to be football players, but also how to be young men, right? So coming from an area such as Central Catholic, very different than Ashtabula, imparting those values into here, you parlayed coming here into discovering and developing the most prolific passer in Ashtabula County history in Zach Winchell, who I got to know because of you and because of my past exploits with a previous company I was affiliated with. I got to meet him. I got to meet his dad, Nate. I got to meet Brian Bisbee, I just golfed with Bisbee's dad yesterday. I mean, what a hell of a guy he is, man.
He's
He
a
got
wild
me laughing.
time, isn't
He kept me laughing the whole time. Something happened to him. He takes a phone call and he's like, "Oh, well, this is happening, so here we go." But then Jacob Bell. I mean, that kid's so different than all the other ones. Quiet kid who just fucking laid wood in Edgewood, man. Just fucking fullback, tight end, O-line. Fuck, that kid did everything. And then you had Troy Peterson, who was a fucking brick wall. I mean, if that kid was coming down the road and said, "I'm going to tackle you," I'd be like, "The fuck you are." I'd run away. But then there's one more, and his name was Isaiah Harris. And Isaiah Harris might be the most gifted athlete I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And I'm not speaking in hyperbole there. I mean, I hadn't been around high school football much, you know what I mean? But frame of reference wise, I've been around kids like Michael Cannell, who was a linebacker at Lakeside. I've been around Anthony Carlisle, a running back, defensive player. Nicky Prashano, who was just a freak punt returner and receiver. Brandon Hanna was a very good quarterback. Jamero Spikes, great running back. But the thing that Isaiah had that none of those kids had outside of Michael and Anthony was that build of just, you can't teach that build, right? You can't. I mean, how tall was he? 6'2"?
Yeah, we listed him, I think, at 6'3". He was probably like 6'1 and a half, 6'2". He was. I said it when we got him as a freshman. This is, and I've, been around some very, very good ones. Some guys, that have ended up on the first team All-Ohio team. When in my days as an assistant or whatever else. And I said Isaiah was the most physically gifted one, I had ever had at that level. I really believe that. And you mentioned some other guys, Peterson, that everybody loves when I tell the story, and I'll tell it right now.
Do it.
My first day in the weight room, Troy Peterson was a freshman. Didn't show up to weights. Went over and knocked on his door. It was 11 a.m. We had to wake him up because he was up all night playing Fortnite. And good Lord, what a man-child he turned into. And, I think about those guys. Zach, of course, is as prolific as probably anybody's ever been or will be here when it comes to throwing the football. And, I'm sure if you asked him some stories about playing for me, we had a very intense, relationship. We had thrown him out of practice a couple of times.
He said, I was the fucking quarterback one and he's throwing me out of fucking practice. Like, who the fuck? And, but that speaks to, you were talking about culture and building that. You built a culture of not just winning, but of respect for you, but for themselves. And I don't think that, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe that doesn't get taught as much, and maybe because you taught that, those kids bought into you.
Well, I think, like, one of the things that we always tried to make it a premium was that they were going to respect one another, and that was the same, the truth, the same there as many of my stops as an assistant. You guys might not get along, you might not be friends, but while we're here, while we're working for common things, we're going to treat each other well. And you think about those guys, and I lived, right in the middle of our district for a lot of my time here, and, some of the relationships that we formed, with some of the players that you named, and, silly things, even like Jake Bell, his dad happens to live in North Canton, and my family lives in Stark County. So at different times, he rode with us on the way back. So, he got to be right there and watch me be a father, or, these guys, they know my daughter well, and my daughter looks up to them like older brothers or older cousins, and that was always the program that I came up in. I babysat a guy that I eventually was an assistant coach with, in Bo Lindesmith, and I used to absolutely wax this kid in NCAA football when run the score up, onside kicks, all the things that, like you would do to your little brother.
He gets that Cardell Jones in the hospital story. Yeah. The fuck told you it was 91, it was 98.
And every time he'd go to bed and his dad, would come home he'd take his wife out to dinner, and I'd watch him, and I'd make sure the score was on the dry erase board on the fridge until I came back the next week. But I learned that from watching those guys be good fathers, be, men of character, men of conviction. And I know that, or I always thought that, like, when I got to a situation like that where I could lead others and yeah, the X's and O's are important, education's important, but you do the other stuff outside of that for many, many, many more hours than you ever do the other two things. If I could, be a positive example of that, I wanted to be that. So, hopefully, when they talk about me, they talk about all the fun we had in the classroom or on the football field or anytime that they saw me, but hopefully they've learned something, and that would be like the best thing, the best outcome of all of that. And
Yeah.
I know we're only looking at a small, you're only aware of a small percentage of the time. You only witness the relationship, a small percentage of the time that I've done this. But I would hope the same would be true, if you talk to the Sandy Valley guys or the Central Catholic guys or the Ridgedale guys. And I was just, having a conversation the other night. My birthday's next week, and 6
Happy
years.
early birthday, man.
Thank you. This is a big ugly one too. 40.
40.
Oh, shit, you don't look a
Hit
day over
hit
38.
man.
Peter Pan finally
Hey,
growing
you don't
up.
have no grays.
They're shaved out of the beard and the hair's cut. There's grays in there, trust me.
Yeah.
But 6 years ago, my family was going through it, and that senior class at Sandy Valley, when I was an assistant, the wide receivers coach, coaching in the secondary, all the seniors coming back from a playoff team decided, they were aware of kind of some of the stuff that was going on, and they met, and we all went out to lunch, and that's still, to this day, Nelson Mosden, Darren Finn, all those guys in that group, that I try to maintain a relationship with now that they're getting older. That's something I'll never forget. And I think, kids always tell you the truth. And I heard Ron Johnson, who's at Salem, and he was at Canton McKinley, I think, when he said this. He said, people all the time rail against young people, but young people have never changed. They do exactly what you expect them to do. If you expect a lot out of them, you're going to get a lot. And if you don't expect very much, you're not going to get very much. And I've always thought the greatest way you can love somebody is to expect a lot out of them. And that's what we always try to do. We maybe did it in an unconventional way. And, I have the attention span of a gnat sometimes. So, maybe we, weren't the most steadfast and right down the line all the time. But certainly our value system was our value system. And we could go from having fun to not having a very good time if we stepped across that. And that really doesn't have anything to do with the last stop I was at. That's how I hope I lead my life. I hope if you went and found my 13-year-old daughter, she would say, hey, my dad's all fun and games if you're doing what you're supposed to do. But the second you don't, he expects what he expects. And I think those expectations are clear, whether it's, being a parent, being a teacher, being a coach, just being an adult man. I think, if you can communicate those things well, you can really get somewhere. And I'm super excited for the next challenge, which is working at our middle school, working maybe to solve some problems in the building. Not that anything intentionally ever bad happened, I don't think. I think there's all, good-meaning educators, well-meaning educators everywhere.
Absolutely.
But, to go down and hopefully raise the bar. And I think, where young people fall short now, is that sometimes that maybe they don't respect themselves enough, or maybe they don't know what a good example looks like. So it's incumbent upon me, and I understand some of the odd situations that'll find you in life. I understand what a responsibility that is.
Absolutely. Well, you touched on a lot of stuff there. I mean, it was fantastic. But I noticed, and I'm very glad, that the conversation seems to be more now in a natural way, flipping away from the football aspect of you to talking about some more deep stuff. And we're going to get into some stuff in this next segment that might not be comfortable for everyone. It might not be, your cup of tea, but this is a podcast about people's stories and how they've overcome. So I'm really excited to get into this next part. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Cut, Ashtabula's first podcast about people for people. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to be back with John Butchko. And I thought you were saying cut.
No.
We're going to get back, and we're going to get into the final part of the show. And, we're going to get it going. We'll see you guys in a minute.
All right.
All right, guys, we are back The Cut Podcast, Ashtabula's first podcast about people for people. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do have a Facebook. We have an Instagram. We'll probably grab a Twitter and a TikTok at some point. I don't know, but that might be in the future.
Just fucking like our YouTube.
Yeah, just like the YouTube. And follow the Facebook page and all that. So, we are back with John Butchko. We are going to get into the final segment of the show here. Before we do, we are going to... I have 2 cigars left. Crack these open.
Oh, thank you, sir.
This is a maker's mark. I'm good on them for right now.
Tom, no, I can't be the only one.
I'll puff in a little bit.
Well, then I'm not going to puff until you puff.
All right, I'll puff. I'll puff.
All right.
Butch, you want a cigar?
No, thank you.
Okay.
My uncle sells them. So if you want Habano sticks on Facebook, see my Uncle Mark. He sells them on there.
A little plug.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll be our first sponsor.
That's right.
Who knows? But
if you get money out of him, congratulations.
That'd be awesome.
You better frame it.
So just to recap a little bit of what we talked about tonight, Butch, so we talked about you as where you started from. We talked about where you've been. So your last stop at Edgewood, parlayed that into some success. I mean, truly, you were out there. You've done stuff that no coach had ever done at that school. A record that stood since, I think, 92, Sean Freeman.
Something like that,
Time at Tuman Valley. His passing record gets taken down by your quarterback, Zach. His Twitter handle, I don't know if he's going to like this, but it's Hefty Lefty. I mean, I don't think he looks like Jared Lorenzen, but I've been wrong before. So now we're going to talk about where you're at.
Okay.
We're going to talk about where you're at. So the first thing I want to talk about, last June, I got a phone call. Probably 8:30 in the morning, and I was headed to work. And this is a day I'm never gonna forget. My dad calls me, and he goes, "Hey Tom," and yeah, Dad, what's up? He was like, "Don't you know John Butchko?" And I said, "Yeah, I know John Butchko. Hell yeah, I do." And he was like, "Go when you get to work, pull up the Star Beacon." So I was like, oh, shit, did this motherfucker get a coaching job somewhere? And so I get to work. I pull it up and said that Coach John Butchko had been arrested on a domestic charge, essentially. So I was floored because, first of all, I got the pleasure of meeting you 2 years ago when I did a prior podcast. And you gave us unlimited access to you. You gave us unlimited access to your team. But outside of that, John, you sent my son, like, a birthday message. Like, unprompted. Like, I just say, hey, my son's birthday's coming up. And you sent something like that. You're always talking about your daughter. That wasn't something that I could ever envision out of you. You know, some people, like, I hate saying this, but some people, you hear it and you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because that dude's a piece of shit. And then you called me that day. You called me. And you said, hey, this is going on. And I said, I'll never forget what I said to you. I said, did you do it? You know, because outside of working with each other, I think that we've become friends, right? I mean, you were at my wedding. You know my son. You've been to my house, both houses. I mean, you're a guy that I've surrounded myself with, and I've been better because I've surrounded myself with you. So that really was something I needed to know. You know what I mean? Like, did you do it? And you paused, and I thought you hung up on me because I thought you were like, fuck this guy. If you were my friend, he wouldn't ask that. But you said, no, I didn't. And in that moment, when you said, no, I didn't, I knew you didn't. I've never known you to lie, to cheat, to steal. And the way you said no was like, it was almost like it was hurtful to you that this was going on. So I want you to tell your story. And then we're gonna get into a little bit more about it. But if you can, tell your story, the unfiltered, way it happened, everything. I'm gonna give you the floor, and when you're ready, you let me go.
All right. Well, it was just like any other day for a teacher in the summer. We all have side jobs, and in addition to coaching football and teaching, I've always carried things on the side. I'm a big, Dave Ramsey fan actually. So
Yeah.
I've always done those things, and the way that this whole thing happened and unfolded was actually really quick. There's not a whole lot to it. I got home from work. It was about 11 o'clock. I had worked 15 or so hours that day, and made a little money on the side. And I had been getting calls from my daughter that she was kind of upset with our situation at the house, and I communicated with some of the people that lived there, mostly the woman in the middle of it, and I told her it wasn't acceptable. And as I came home, I've only come to find this out later, my house was, for lack of a better term, swatted, which means a 911 call from across town, nobody that's actually any part of what's going on inside your house, and it was kind of a setup. And I remember I have begged and pleaded that they release the body cam since the day that this happened. In my bathroom on East 39th Street, I begged these cops, there's got to be a supervisor we can talk to. I'll go anywhere else. We're going to start an unfortunate chain of events, in my life that it's not just going to be undone. And you could blame whatever, my career, the way I live my life. And I think, you said I didn't know that of you. I think people watch me compete, or, when you see the most public parts of my life, the onside kicks, the kind of
watermelon.
Yeah, just the do anything to win on the football field. That's not who I am when I go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just fought and won what was almost an impossible custody case for my 13-year-old daughter.
Absolutely.
It was nearly impossible. I think a lot of barriers were put in front of me, and it was, I think people believed or wanted to believe that something really bad lived inside of me because I'm so competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But as it turns out, they booked me into the Ashtabula County Jail. I spent a total of parts of 4 days in the Ashtabula County
hold
Jail.
on, before we get too far, because I don't think we really got to like the subject of why you, like, what were you arrested for?
I was arrested for domestic violence. The call came in, the police report stated that a woman that lived at my house said I put my hands on her, and I didn't say any cuss words. I didn't even stand up. I was laying in my bed trying to go to sleep, actually going to work to prepare for a fundraiser the next morning, and the music wouldn't get shut off.
So was there like was there a dispute? Like, was she like upset with you, or like, is that why you didn't really like raise your voice or say any cuss words?
Well, I thought it could be a setup.
Sure.
I thought, if you look back to the morning of that day, the people that lived in the upstairs unit, and you can search up the things that they've done that have landed them in jail. One of the tenants upstairs had started we had exchanged words in the driveway. It was 8 a.m. He had every door in his car open, banging a bunch of music. And I simply said, hey, man, everybody in town knows who lives here, and they think it's me. This isn't very good decorum for somebody that does what I do for a living. I'm going to have to ask you not to do this. And, he got kind of heated with me, and I went to work, and this guy had warrants outstanding.
So this is the same day?
This is the morning of that day. I knew this guy had outstanding warrants. I knew that I was going to inconvenience him. I knew what my house was kind of like leading up to this. He had a bunch of nefarious characters hanging around at all times, with my kids and that girl's kids constantly being there. It just wasn't a real good situation to begin with. And then I make a pretty simple neighborly request, go on about my day to coach football, take my daughter to basketball camp, and then go to work for wage on the side. And by the time that I got home, the other party was pretty aggressive. The girl was pretty aggressive. And
so you're saying this is the neighbor girl?
No, this is the girl that I lived with.
Okay, she was aggressive towards you.
Yeah, she was very aggressive towards me. I was, first of all, exhausted. Second of all, I had a million other things to do. And then third of all, I'm just not going to conduct myself like that. I'm not going to go at a girl. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
And, as it went on, I tried to diffuse the situation every way you can. Go take a shower. Put time in between what's going on now. And, the things that were said to me in that bedroom, no dad wants to hear them. You can tell when you're being egged on into something negative.
Oh, yeah.
And I was attempting to be egged on to retaliate, and I laid there. And, as the police showed up, and of course they take pictures of everything, and she had some marks like on her arm. And I simply said, man, I'm sorry my face got in the way. I'm sorry that my face happened to be in the way of, some of these flying hands.
Now, hold on. I want to ask you a question because I did read this. I did read the initial article from the Star Beacon.
It's pretty easy. It's the first search result still.
Yeah. So if I just do a quick search as far as you in that incident.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I go to the Star Beacon, I know it had mentioned some marks, but if I remember correctly, let me double check. It said that there were some marks. Check face. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah.
So there were some marks on her hands, and you said your face got in the
way. Yeah, I did, and that was. I really couldn't believe that in America in 2021, if you're not recording the goings on in your own house, like you would need to record that, literally nonstop to defend against something that may not be out there, and that, was very hard, and I was booked into the jail and then released, and immediately put on leave as any professional would be in my profession. I don't think that was anything unfairly done. I think like the opinion around me changed, and certainly as I went to court, and it was immediately dismissed at my first appearance. I don't know what people expect out of me, and really, like I've heard probably 500 times in the last 13 months. Well, you're not a very good example for young people, and I think for young men, what better example is there? If you live with another living, breathing human, a relative, a child, a significant other or spouse, just any other human being, you're susceptible to this at any time. And I navigated a tricky situation to the best of my ability. The Ohio Department of Education came back and decided they weren't going to do anything, which I felt was appropriate. The courts, of course, handled it. Children's Services, who got involved, cleared me very early on in the investigations. And, I really couldn't think about anything else until that was done. I mean, there was nothing else that could even occupy my thoughts.
So here, I'm just reading the article right now. It says that, let's see, she said that you came home, started a fight, and then you tried to take her phone, and it fell and it struck you in the face. I'm guessing that's.
I don't agree with that statement.
No? Okay. But
I would say that statement is false.
All right, so it says the deputies observed red marks on her arm, the woman's arm and face. So I presume if she hit you, there would be marks on her hands.
Yeah.
So what about the face?
I don't really even know where that would have been on her face.
Really?
I really don't, and it could be something as simple.
So are you still going through like litigation? Like
no.
All right. So there's also another article that says charges have been dismissed. So if the charges have been dismissed, we talked a little bit earlier while Tom was handling some personal business, but you said you're not currently coaching. Is that part of the reason why? Because of this whole situation?
Yeah, I think and I can't really comment on my previous employer, but I know the places that I've gone to look for head coaching jobs since. And, some of them I've gotten all the way to where they selected me. And, as my name starts to leak out, they back off at the last minute. And these are, tough conversations to have. And they all cite that source, which, ironically enough, if you go on the Ashtabula Court website, there's no record. It's been dismissed. And then responsibly, I had it expunged. The only artifact that remains is the original article, which somehow is search result number one. And, you know, I've had conversation upon conversation with that newspaper. Their lawyer has emailed me. 70 professionals in education have written a letter to the newspaper to have that article de-indexed or unpublished. You'll never delete the news, right?
So I'm just looking here, just on a Google search of your name. So related to the Star Beacon in that article. So the main article, so it shows that August 5th, they wrote an article that the charges were dismissed. And then kind of like a related article to that, so it'd be like a sub-article, I guess, would be the original article that you're referring to.
Okay.
So
yeah, it had been in different orders for a long time.
No, to be honest with you, I did when I first, preparing for this podcast. I just want to know who you were, and what, and obviously I know the situation, or I'm familiar with the situation somewhat, and so I just did a Google search of your name, and that was absolutely the first, the one that said you were charged with domestic violence was the very first article that popped up.
And I've had people reach out, from all over the place to try to help me and try to help me with that in and of itself, and I think the volume of clicks it's generated, it's
keeps it at the top.
It's curiously, one of the few times that I've been indexed where my name is a link at the bottom, and those are questions that I've asked that I really don't get an answer to, and like I said, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, 70 education professionals wrote a letter asking them to be de-indexed or unpublished because you just really are what the internet says you are.
It's 100% true.
It's a court of public perception.
Absolutely, and as a publicly employed person, you're already, tried and found guilty a lot of times in the court of public perception
before you even actually go to court.
Yeah, in any situation, could be for jaywalking, but when we have it right there and quickly recalled, that really proposes some complicated things to have to deal with. And I always think about if I didn't know me and I sent my resume or I called to talk to you, and the first thing that you're going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is go to Google, and this is your first impression of me. I never would want that in my worst nightmares. I wouldn't want that to be what your first impression of me is that I was even ever accused of that. That's a serious situation. It has a ripple effect. I don't think it's anything to be toyed with, and
So you think it has something to do with? So you said you thought it was a setup. Do you think it has something to do with like cancel culture type deal, or what? And let me ask you another follow-up question to that. What would be the motive behind that?
Well, I think the ways I've explained it to people, I wouldn't really say. I guess maybe a little bit of cancel culture. If you make these accusations against a man that's employed by the public, you're gonna get somewhere with them, right? And we all have kids, and we would want any accusation against one of their teachers to be thoroughly investigated.
Absolutely.
And I think that's everybody's right, and I think that's a wonderful idea. I think in this case, somebody in no way related to Buckeye Local Schools tried to game the system, to gain some things. I lost my house as a result of this. I was, lost the most public part of my profession as a result of these actions. It led to a circumstance where, I don't even know if I could blame anybody for, saying that guy's got the troubles he's got, maybe we best part ways. So I really, like I said, I don't know if it was a cancel culture thing so much as somebody saw a situation where their life was infinitely easier by me being involved in it, or me and my family being involved in it, saw that train was leaving the station and said, man, I got to stop this train. I got to stop this train from going away because I stand to benefit from his involvement in my life.
Do you think it was somebody related to the school district?
No, I don't. I think it was directly related to that woman and her family. I in no way do I think it was anybody, in any way setting me up from a professional standpoint.
Did she withdraw her statement, or?
Well, it started in the time between, the alleged event and when I went to court. Her 6-year-old daughter, who was the only person home, had spoken to the police again and said, my mother made me tell these things. And so she eventually, I guess, withdrew it officially, but it was going
and that's
nowhere.
Why it was dismissed.
It was going nowhere. I mean, there was nowhere it could have went.
Can we talk real quick? You said the daughter, 6-year-old daughter, comes out and says, "My mother made me do these things." Can we talk about the bravery of kids right now? I mean, that's brave as shit, man. That's your mom. That woman gave you life. You know what I'm saying? And you were a father figure to that child, obviously, but you made enough of an impact in that child's life to for that child to know right from wrong there. And kind of it's kind of prevalent right now, but like the Deshaun Watson case, this 16-year-old kid, his mom was one of the accusers, right? And he goes on Instagram Live and says, "Listen, my mom was like bragging about that shit, man." And then once she heard money was involved, then she changes her tune.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's fantastic that children now know not only the difference between right and wrong, but like they understand a more broader scope with this shit, man. Like a 6-year-old child had the presence of mind to be like, "Hey, this guy's life," and in archaic terms, but this guy's life is upside down, and I lied pretty much, and the bravery of her to come forward and say that, like maybe it wasn't brave, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I think that something like that really speaks to the youth in this country, like how they're kind of proceeding. You know what I mean? Like
Some bold ass kids.
some bold ass kids. And talking about kids, I mean, you have a daughter, Lily, obviously, and
You said she's 13?
She's 13.
she's 13, so she's cognizant enough to know what's going on. You fought. I remember having conversations with you about how hard you're fighting to get this little girl home to you, right? And that little girl knows that you fought hard to get her home to you, and then that happens. What was Lily's whole state of mind, I guess, during this? Like, was she hesitant? Was she reticent? Did she, like, was it steadfast immediately? Like, my dad didn't do this, like, because I mean, I imagine it might have been hard.
Well, first of all, before I answer the question about my daughter, I'm eternally grateful to that young lady that, eventually was led to the right decision. I don't know that a day could pass where I don't reflect fondly on that. And, people have often asked how I met the mother. Our daughters, that girl's older sister and my daughter, were very good friends. So that's kind of how we ended up in one another's lives, first and foremost. So that's really how the relationship started, and that younger daughter, certainly I will be forever thankful for people in her life led her towards the right thing. For my daughter, very early on, she decided that my dad really didn't do this. She was more than enough aware of everything that had gone on. In the hours leading up to that, it's probably never very easy when your dad lives as public a life as I did. I mean, whether or not you're talking about football or education, her dad, for all the good things he's ever done and the flaws he has and the bad things he's ever done, it's all right out there and in her face. But my daughter and I have a very great and honest relationship. We talked about being honest with players, and I even alluded to it before. We honestly have spoken about it. We had dialogue honestly very early on, and certainly for her and I, the effort that went into winning my custody case and all the things that went into that as part of my divorce and part of the custody, where it's an uphill battle for a dad in the first place. You know, her and I really have a good understanding of one another, and it forced, if that custody and divorce case ever forced me to do anything, it was become a better parent and a better man. I made a lot of lifestyle changes and a lot of do a lot of things better than I ever did them before. And this little hiccup, which I think history will reflect, if you look at the whole time of my life, it was a hiccup, a small period of time, isn't going to define, anything between my daughter and I. And it placed some stress on us. There was a lot of questions that had to be answered, and it was a constantly evolving situation.
Were you going through a custody battle during that time?
It had just finished. It had just finished.
That probably, if that wasn't the case, it probably would have prolonged things.
Oh boy, would it ever?
I'm sure people probably brought that into question after the fact. They were probably like, "Was this the right move? Was did we make the right decision to give him custody? Like,
Well,
was that a?
Oh, I'm fairly certain that was probably a part of it. There was some characters that had their foot in both camps.
I was just going to ask
yeah,
that.
I'd rather not go into all that, but there were some people that were a part of both situations that probably this validated any negative feeling they had ever had about me, and it was sad and humbling and sickening all at the same time to watch people who maybe you knew or knew you a little bit, like, celebrating your downfall. I haven't always been perfect. I've made millions of mistakes in my life, but for the last now 3+ years, I've tried to live a better way, and that was not a part of it. That was something I had no control over. And unlike other crimes, I likened it to murder on another podcast. Well, there's not a dead body. There's no murder, right? There's not a busted out window and money missing. There's not a burglary. This is a little bit more ambiguous. It's not anything that you can fight proactively. It's not say, well, put that stuff on my hand, see if I fired a gun. It's not, dust from my fingerprints around the safe and we'll get right to the bottom of this. I know I wasn't there. It's a lot more intellectual than that. And I'm, at the end of the day, delayed justice is better than no justice. I would have rather never have gone through it. And we joked in the 6 weeks in between, and it's only a joke because it turned out the way that it did. That you can either be an example or a cautionary tale, and I hope, like I said, my hope is to always be a little bit of both. And I've tried to take my platform, and I don't know how big that platform is, but the platform this has afforded me, and it's really taken me some neat places. I've spoken on podcasts that are from England, coaching podcasts. It's brought me some things in the recruiting area. Key on Sports, Vince McKee did a great job. Letting me put it into my own words, which I thought was a unique take on all of this. Those kind of things were afforded to me as a result of this. And like I said, people have railed against, well, what kind of example are you? And I think, as I was doing the statistics to prepare for my own defense, to participate in my own defense, the numbers are staggering about that kind of situation, true or otherwise. And, I'm glad the appropriate outcome was reached rather than speeding to one, rather than, taking a plea, or some people unfortunately are put into situations where they have to say they're guilty of something they never did. And I'm just glad, and I'm fortunate that that's not my lot in life.
Absolutely. Now let me ask you a question. When this happened, within a few days, I heard that John Butchko was no longer the head coach of Edgewood High School football team. And, I know the replacement. I know him well. He's a friend of Anthony and I's. And understandably, we're excited for him, happy for him. But it was never clear to me, were you fired or did you resign from the position of head coach?
I resigned. The board minutes reflect I resigned for personal reasons.
Okay.
And that was, I don't know that there's ever a good time for something like that to happen. But that was probably the worst time it could happen, other than right in the middle of the season. You're making all of your preparations.
Yep.
There was no guarantees it was going to be resolved as quickly as it was. There was no guarantees it was going to be resolved in the manner that it was. So,
correct.
People have a job to do. People have a responsibility. Those young men in that program and the students, had a responsibility for people to have plans so that they're not the unintended victims of this.
Correct.
So, I can't fault anybody for what happened, there. I think the thing since then I'm a little bit upset about, other places, other places where.
Absolutely.
But, there's been supportive people, and I say it all the time that I talk, there's been supportive people in Buckeye schools to me through this, some of my good friends in the building, like Brian Harper, Jessica Paci, they got a hold of me like every day. They're involved in our union. Kelly Loudon was involved in our union then. Other teachers as the leave started to end, and then, the best supportive people, and you guys are gonna laugh, man, have been the kids. Like the kids that, you know, there's knuckleheads in every school, right? And I could name them and probably embarrass them talking about this, but there's the knuckleheads were the ones that would stop by and say, "Are you okay? How is everything? You know, how's everything going? You know, that boy, you know, I learned something from your thing." You know, and then as time went forward, you know, in the way that only young people can do it, you know, they you know, helped me come to a period of acceptance, and you know, I can accept what happened. You know, I don't have to like it, but I can accept that it happened. But again, if I did something else for a living where I only saw adults, where I only, you know, maybe I worked in a cubicle or something, I'd have went nuts. But being around, you know, the groups of young people that I've been around, and the way that they've, I mean, I've been invited to more graduation parties this year than ever in my career. You know, people would stop by and talk to me, or just, you know, have a minute when I was in the cafeteria at lunch, and you know,
up,
I don't know if it became street cred or, you know, if it was anything else, but you know, they saw a guy that went through something, a guy that, you know, probably like teenagers tend to feel, whether or not, you know, those feelings are based on something, you know, something that's real or not, you know, the feelings of isolation, the feelings of being alone, and they wanted to make sure they empathized, you know, with their teacher, and you all talked about young people coming forward, and I think that's one of the greatest things we do in education now, is from the time they're in kindergarten till, you know, we get rid of them in the 12th grade, and every stop in between, you know, we teach a lot of empathy. You know, the last place I was at, Sandy Valley, we had mindfulness in the morning. You know, we're doing some things that if you haven't been in school in a while, you wouldn't even recognize them. You wouldn't even recognize some of the things that go on. You know, I went to school in the 90s and graduated high school in 2000. And it was like gladiator camp mentally, right? Like you had to be tough. You know, you had to have good shoes, good clothes, all that. And now, you know, I think kids are a little bit more understanding. They're a little bit more inclusive. And I think, you know, I'm not one of the industry leaders in that, but whoever started making those decisions, you know, really started us down a good path. And I think we're going to see some really good, capable, and interesting people join the adult ranks in the coming years.
Well, it produces good leaders.
It does.
You know what I mean? Like Anthony and I, you know, we graduated together. We graduated 2007 from Ashtabula Lakeside. I mean, it's not the easiest school to go to. You know, it was. I mean, there was some. I mean, lack of a better term. I mean, there was just some fucked up shit that happened there. I mean, every day. I mean, people were getting beat up in the hall if you were different, or you know. And there were some teachers that really put the onus on acceptance and, you know, trying to include everyone, but other teachers kind of turned a blind eye. You know, I mean, I don't know if that was your experience, but I mean,
well,
it kind of was for me.
You know, I didn't go to school too often.
I know.
I skipped a lot of school, so my high school days are a little vague and hazy. But
well, but
you know, I was cool. About. I was cool with everybody, so I mean,
you were.
I get it. I didn't.
You
ever,
were.
I tried, like John was saying, you know, empathy. I tried to put myself in everybody's shoes and try to understand where everybody's come from, and you know, just kind of treat them the way I wanted to be treated.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like if I was never the type to like bully anybody or.
No, you weren't.
So
you weren't.
Definitely, I try to feel everybody, you know, and just really understand them for the most part.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's so like when I was in school every day, or else my dad would have beat my ass like halfway. I mean, you know my dad. I mean, he would have beat me halfway down the road and then drug me back just so he could beat me again if I was fucking around with school. Because school was like the most important thing for him with me. I mean, get your education, get to a good college, go make something of yourself so you're not living in my basement. You know what I mean? Like, but you know, I got to see quite a bit, and the people I surrounded myself with, you know, my friends to this day, you know, I didn't have a lot of friends in school, right? So I had, you know, I knew Anthony, we were cool. You know, I knew, you know, Willie, we were cool. We're friends to this day. You know, Dave Clemens, you know, best friend. We're still best friends to this day. But those dudes and those guys were always the people that I surrounded myself with because I always wanted to be empathetic. Like I'm not saying I was an angel, you know. I mean, there was like a kid or two I didn't like, and you know, I regret it to this day. You know, I've reached out to some of them and apologized, you know. But it's nice now that like a lot of the stuff like we're seeing now like with a lot of kids like stuff that back when I was in school, like if just for an example, if you came out as gay when I was in school, it was it wasn't like a it wasn't like a death sentence or nothing. Like you weren't gonna get beaten up, but I mean you were gonna get ridiculed, and it's an unfortunate fact. But now, you know, you're seeing a lot more acceptance of the LGBTQ. And I do not mean to minimize that. It's just I don't know the exact term, so I do apologize. But that community is much more represented and much more accepted and has been ingrained in schools. And I feel now, and you being a teacher, me as a former teacher, I saw a lot of that acceptance. And I think schools now are a better place. So when you talk about those kids coming up to you, I feel it's truly coming from a place of pure empathy, not something like, oh, I better go see how Butchko's doing. You know what I mean? It's like they didn't they didn't have to do it; they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the type of person that I've known you to be. Is that person that people are drawn to? You know, in our every interaction that we have. I mean, when you call me just a bullshitter, like you know, there like stuff like going on, and like you know, I could be that ear for you. It's one of those, or you be that ear for me in times when I needed you. Like there's instances in people's lives when you need someone and you can lean on them, and these kids now, even though 17 years old, you know, they're mature enough and cognizant enough of what's going on that they can have an intellectual conversation with you and truly empathize. Maybe they don't understand everything going on, but they know enough that hey, coach is hurting and I know what it's like to hurt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I need to be there for him. But evolving that, and we talked about Lily, we talked about the kids at the school. So being affected by what happened to you and the charges being dismissed, I've talked to you and I've talked to other people and people that we know, mutual people, and you still aren't hired. And you said it's because people are shying away from you and all this. Now, I like to do homework. I think that's one of the reasons I got made fun of a bit in high school because I actually liked homework.
Oh boy.
But
Not me. I can
yeah.
tell you that.
I know.
Boy,
listen,
why?
I had classes where the teacher I would ace a test, but my homework never got done.
You never fucking did your homework.
Never fucking did my
So
homework.
you got to see.
No, they would
Oh.
look. I would technically fail the grade, fail the class, but I remember one specific teacher. I'm not going to name any names, but I remember one specific teacher. She said, "You know what? She didn't say fuck, but you know what you're doing. You know the material. You just don't do your homework, and you don't come to school." She said, "So I'm going to give you a D to pass you, but you need to come to school and you need to do your homework." Well, I still didn't listen.
Now that I'm on this side of the desk, those are the most frustrating ones. Like those really, really bright ones that don't do anything. Those are the hardest ones to deal with. You know, that are intellectually way up here, and the work is they just don't want to. They just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And like that's always the most frustrating ones because you know I taught financial literacy and I'm really passionate about it. And I would always say, hey, you're somewhere along the way you're costing yourself money. And if you can't think of anything else, think that you're costing your future self money, whether it's through college, you know, grant and aid or scholarships or whatever have you, or just the work ethic to take work home and get ahead in the corporate world, which, you know, many professions, you know, I've got friends that do all kinds of jobs and, you know, they take work home to get ahead of the competition. Those are the most frustrating ones right there.
Well, I'm sorry. Coming from this side of the desk, I'm sorry.
Talking about the homework, I wanted to look up some instances like yours, and there was an instance that happened right around the time that yours happened. His name was Clay Harden, and he was a coach. Clay Harden. I don't know if you know this.
I haven't heard this one.
Clay Harden, Fairborn High School.
Okay.
Fairborn High School was sentenced to home detention, and school officials has said he resigned. That came out in January of this past year.
Okay.
Okay. So the resignation happened in January, right? Well, that what he did, and he was, he did that. He was sentenced to home detention. It took them. High school football starts in August, September, October, November, December, January. It took him 6 months, call it, for him to resign and the process to go through. So I just find it crazy that your instance was dismissed and everything, and you still had to go through your process and ended up resigning. This dude did it. It took them a whole 6 months, and then he resigns. You know, and I say resigns because I don't know if he was made to or if he did that on his own volition. But either way, what I'm getting at is yours seemed very fast. It was quick, boom, 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 boom. This guy seems more drawn out. And if someone watching from the Fairborn area in the future that might have knowledge of the situation, and I'm not portraying it the right way, I do apologize. This is just kind of the information that I've been given over the couple articles I've read. So why do you think that is? Why was yours so quick when these other people are vetted for a long? I mean, Zach Smith from Ohio State, when he beat his wife, and he did it. Urban Meyer knew he did it, but it still took months of him still being employed, and then he finally gets fired. So why was it so quick for you, but it took months for these other people?
Well, first of all, high school and college are two different things in a lot of cases.
Oh, sure.
So that would probably, there's millions of dollars at stake in college athletics, and there's just different people you're accountable to for different reasons.
Sure.
At the college game. So, the one at Ohio State and it stemmed back to Florida, it's probably a little bit easier to hide at that level. The story, and I'm not familiar with that story at all, believe it or not. You picked the one I probably haven't researched. I would imagine, if I had to guess, he was on leave. There were some facts of the case that probably had to be discussed with him and his attorney. Any representation. Without knowing all of it, I just guessing, from far away like I am, he was probably, like I said, put on leave and on leave the whole time. It just took a lot longer. My situation and the one I know the best, it went through court quickly. It was resolved legally quickly because, of some of the facts of it, some of the situations falling apart, and they let her just withdraw her complaint, which
it was within a month, right?
About 6 weeks.
It
Just kind of expedited things. I don't want to say anybody did anything that I don't know firsthand, but I know on my part it was gonna be kind of hard to take it any further with the facts of things changing, and the recanting or the changing of the story that we talked about earlier. That's a supplement to the police report. A lot of people just didn't have that because it was like 10 or 14 days later. So I think any bureaucracy, and the things that oversee us are bureaucracies, whether it's your local school district, any of the Ohio Department of Education, the NCAA, like those things just take time. And when you're going through it, every day feels like a month.
Coming from, being in the military, I understand that 100%. Hurry up and wait.
That's right. Every day feels like a month. You wish it would get over quickly, but you want to make sure it gets over the right way. And I don't know if there's a graceful way to be a defendant in that kind of situation, but if there is, I hope I was one. But there were days, we talked, I was going crazy. You take what's been the most meaningful situation of my life is involvement in sports, and the most of which is football, and that's the one thing you can't do. That that's not a statement to anybody else other than I was driving myself crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept myself busy. I found things to be interested in. I read a lot, um, and I prayed a ton. I'm Catholic, so I prayed like every novena under the sun. My grandmother's always telling me the memorare when you're in trouble.
Memorare.
I did that like every day.
Yep.
I would stop in my car delivering pizzas somewhere quiet and just, bang out a couple of prayers. And, I probably haven't been the best example of faith my entire life, but I hope my faith is as strong as it feels like it is. I put my faith in God and just begged and asked again and begged some more, that the truth, come out. And I'm glad that it has. And, you know, the number one question I get all the time is, well, what do you say about people that are skeptical of you? And I don't really give it a second thought. And that's hard to do. It's much easier to say that than it isn't than it is to do that. But I don't really give that any thought if I can help it. I know who I am, and I think probably to a level that a lot of people haven't been. My life has been dissected, so there's not really any secrets left. There's just not. So it believe it or not, on the other side of it, 13 months later, it's kind of a freeing feeling. It's like you can't kill something that's already dead, and like it's not maybe that morbid, but it's kind of that same feeling. It's a very freeing sensation. Like, we've talked about all my sins. I don't really care to talk about yours, but we can. But we've dissected mine. So I live at peace with a lot of things now. I enjoy, some of the things in my life that I took for granted probably a lot more. I enjoy, coming to work. This whole year as an educator, coming to work, it was dangling in the balance. And, that it was dangling in the balance and then given back to me. A lot of people don't take second chances and run, and I just hope I'm not ever one of those people. A chance to, have very real consequences waiting for you.
Absolutely.
But, God and every piece of fact didn't allow those consequences to come to be. So I definitely, I don't I don't get worked up about anything anymore. Like I'm very quiet. I stay to myself, which is one of the hardest things in the world for me to do, is to just stay off by myself, stay pretty quiet, stay out of the way. Not that I enjoyed the nightlife ever before that, but I just really keep to myself and keep to what's important. My grandmothers are getting older, and they've been big influences on my life. And I posted a picture the first day of summer break where I took the two of them out to dinner. I mean, it doesn't get any more innocent than taking your grandmothers out to dinner. I'm trying to do the right thing. So that's what we're doing. We went out and I ate steak and they ate chicken tenders like they were 6. But I went to dinner with my grandmas who go to church. I think it's the funniest thing. My mom's mom and my dad's mom go to church together every Sunday. That's probably about the cutest thing in the world. And
that is adorable.
I go back and spend as much time with them as I can. That now that all of my grandfathers are dead, and I just try to help with them in any way that I can, and try to pay back some of the great things they ever did for me.
So here's my question: where does John Butchko see himself in the next 12 months?
In the next 12 months, that's pretty easy. I'm still under contract, so I'll be at Braden, 186 days. But I think, outside of that, I hope to watch as much high-level sports as I can. I mean, we've talked a number of times, and I go watch as many high school sports as I can,
Absolutely.
Whether it's where I work or anywhere else. There's been, I'll apply for head coaching jobs as they come open. I'm getting ready to take the administrator's test to, maybe get my principal's license.
To be a principal of a school?
Yeah, to be a principal of a school.
Shit,
or,
cool. Nice.
I've reconnected with some people from my younger years. We didn't really have a chance to talk about them, but I have some really, really like embarrassingly successful friends that have done some wonderful things in their career. You know the guy that invented you see the Dave app commercials.
The Dave app, yeah.
I went to junior high with him.
Oh,
You know, two of my best friends are doctors. One is in a different foreign country every time that I see him. He teaches with the Department of Defense. One's a tennis pro in East Cleveland. So like, I was the flunky at my lunch table, and I'm a teacher with a master's degree. So you know those guys, those people around, and you know, and the other people in my life that mean a lot to me. You know, go and I haven't discounted, you know, maybe trying to get into some business type things, but I certainly am always passionate about sports. You know, that's what I'm going to do in my free time, and um, continue to get better at the stock market type of stuff. I've gotten oddly interested in that lately, um, but you know, just hopefully leading people in a positive way, and you know, the task right now is to lead young people at what's going to be Braden Middle School here in the future. Um, you know, that's the matter at hand for the next 12 months. Um, you know, and if it happens to be longer than that, great. And if it's somewhere else, great. And you know, for the first time, I think ever since I've been an adult, you know, I just take each day as it comes, and you know, worry about tomorrow, and just do the best we can today. And that's not lip service. That's not cliches. That's just where we are right now. You know, that's just really where we are right now. There's not a chance, not a sense in making a bunch of long-term plans for, you know, things I don't know what that's going to look like. So we'll just continue to work hard. And
where would you like to be? Let's say in 5 years. I presume you would want another coaching job.
Well, I think the itch is always going to be there to coach.
Right.
You know, maybe I'm at the phase of my career to look at the college game.
I was going to ask you, do you plan on maybe moving up to a different level?
Well, I have a daughter that's approaching college. You know, and they take care of you if you work at a college. So that's not, you know, that's not any statement about where I work right now. That's dollars and cents. So you know, you want to test yourself at the highest level you can. I think I would love the work of being an athletic director. Not that I wouldn't like any other part of school administration, but if I could pick one, I'd like to be an athletic director. I'm getting old, so if it's somewhere,
you said your birthday's next week.
Yeah,
almost 40. Huh?
Yeah. So you know, if it's time to be somewhere warm, it might be time to be somewhere warm.
Hell yeah!
But
Florida's pretty nice around this time of year.
Yeah, you know, I've always been interested in being somewhere warm. But you know, if I could get back into coaching, I would love to. I haven't ever denied that fact. And there's nothing quite like, you know, being a head coach. Not because I can't work with anybody else. You know, I love the nerd things about it. Like, I love making the special teams charts. I love, you know, how we're going to compile data. I love, you know, the organizational stuff. And really, to be honest, I love knowing that X number of people, you know, ball boys, trainers, coaches, players, are depending on me, you know, to help them. I got a lot of, if you ever watch, one of my favorite movies is the Babe Ruth story.
Yeah.
And, you know, for as great an athlete as he was, he always wanted to be the manager. He said, you know, have guys, you know, caring about, you know, knowing he cares about them and he's responsible for them. And that was one of my favorite movies as a kid. It remains to be so today. And I think that part really speaks to me a lot.
That's John Goodman.
That was John Goodman. That was John Goodman. And, you know, so if I could do that, I would love to. And if I don't, you know, I'm happy with where I've taken it thus far. You know, I don't know how significant my impact on the whole scope of things is locally or otherwise. But, you know, I could always hit my pillow at night, you know, have my head hit the pillow at night and say, you know, this is a program that, you know, when I was in charge of it, I'd want to play in and I'd want to be an assistant coach in. You know, we definitely tried some unconventional things, and not just for the sake of being unconventional. We tried them because they were giving us the best opportunities to be successful. And if it never comes around again, I'm okay with where it is. You know, I've directed some teams that were more competitive than they ever should have been as a head coach. And as an assistant, I've been a part of really great football and some really great programs filled with some really great people. So, you know, I'm excited more than anything else to see where things take me. You know, and there's talk, at least, if I would land another head coaching job, to complete the circle, that we would, be in book territory. Some of the people that I've talked to said, well, that's gonna take place, if you get another head coaching job. So if that would happen, that would be another project. Not that I think I'm all that interesting, but apparently some people think I am.
I think you're interesting.
So we'll see what happens. But again, the premium right now is raising Lily to the best of my ability and putting her in great situations. She thinks she wants to be an athlete, and
What does she play?
She plays basketball and volleyball, and I hope she goes back to playing softball. I've begged her to play soccer her entire life. I think
she never played.
She never played. Would never do what her dad asked her to do. But she's crazy about playing basketball. We follow around a truly exceptional athlete in high school basketball right now. That's what she did for her 13th birthday. Was met Ohio's next big stud basketball player. Got her picture with him. Just made her day.
Who's that?
That's Darren Peterson out of CVCA.
Darren Peterson.
She took her picture with him, and that was all she wanted for her 13th. Made a sign.
That's cool.
DP, it's my birthday. Pick with me. And he looked up in warm-ups, nodded yes, and we waited for what seemed like an hour for this 15-year-old kid to come out of the locker room, and my daughter to get a picture by him. She was so nervous. And
does she have the picture framed?
It's better than framed right now. It's on Instagram. So apparently that's where.
So she is flexing on the haters.
That's right.
She is flexing on the haters.
So raising her and having her chase her dreams, whatever that is. She also cheers. So
right.
She's into everything, and I'm really excited to see what she can do for herself. And her older brother, is now working. The son that I raised is now working his way back into our lives, and for the last 6 years, haven't been without him. Because of things with his mother. It happens to be Lily's mother. Getting to talk to him every day is a really great rush, and I make sure I Snapchat him. Of course, that you're only what you exist on. Only what you exist on the internet. I get to tell him I love him every day, and for something as simple as that. And you guys are both dads. Yep. You guys both freely get to tell, probably the totality of your children, how you feel about them. And we had to go 6 years without the relative that she cares about the most. And I certainly, love both of my children, but he's now back a part of our lives, and that's just awesome.
That's fantastic.
That is the biggest win I think that I've ever been a part of is him coming back into things. Now that he's turned 18, now that he's coming into his own, and I asked him in true dad fashion, is there anything you need? I got a cash app you anything? He's always like, man, I'm good. I'm like, you're not playing this game right, man. It's move the money from my pocket, move the money from my pocket to yours. So he's got a little bit.
You're asking, I'm answering.
You always need something.
Shit, I wish my dad would ask me if he needs cash out. Man, I could use a cool 20 right now. But yeah. So I think we've pretty much hit it tonight. I think we.
Now, I saw in there you were going to ask me about Johnny Depp, and I was really, really, really excited to answer that question.
You know what?
Fucking ask him, Tom.
Let's fucking do it.
Let's
fucking do it. Let's do it.
Johnny Depp.
So.
Oh yeah, because I guess that would relate, huh?
It does.
That would be a fucking Okay.
Let's end it with that. So actually, here's what we're gonna do, because that's gonna be a topic. So we're gonna take one final quick break. We'll be right back. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, everything on this channel. YouTube, The Cut. Facebook, The Cut. Instagram, The Cut 440 Podcast. Hit us up. Throw it in there. Message us. Tell us if there's someone interesting that you want us to interview. Throw it up there. Fucking send it. We'll do it. We don't care. We'll talk to anyone. I mean, who would have been awesome to have on this podcast? Aaron Hernandez, but he's dead. Anyway, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. So right now we're about to finish up. And Anthony, you said it was good. Butch, you were peeping my screen. Yeah, let's talk about, to finish this up here, the Johnny Depp trial. Now, for those of you who have been living under a rock for the past, 2-3 years, something like that.
That would be me. I didn't pay attention to Johnny Depp shit at all.
Well, God, man, you missed the best soap opera of all time.
I was looking at other trials going on, but
Yeah, the Ghislaine Maxwell, maybe.
Ghislaine Maxwell was going on. Steve Bannon,
Oh yeah, the crazy shit. So Amber Heard, essentially, she's an actress. She was an Aquaman. That's really all I know her from. But I know Johnny Depp from, Edward Scissorhands, The Pirates of the Caribbean, to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Johnny Depp's a fucking strange dude, man. But Johnny Depp, more than anything, is a prolific actor, musician, humanitarian. And it's kind of the situation that I saw with you. I don't know Johnny Depp. I don't know him. It's you and I talk about it all the time. Jameis Winston. You can have the best smile, you can make people laugh, but that doesn't mean you're a good dude, right? Johnny Depp, he's got that good smile. He makes people laugh. He says the right things. He does the right things to the media, but you don't know who this dude is behind when the camera clicks off. You know what I mean? But something to me just said it doesn't seem like Johnny Depp would be that kind of dude that would just beat his wife. And stuff came out about him. Like Amber Heard was going around and she was like, well, Johnny Depp had a salt shaker of cocaine and he would drink every night. And I remember hearing that and going, it's like a football player. I'm not looking at him to be my role model. I'm looking at him for what he is. He's an entertainer. And if he likes to drink wine and do a little bit of cocaine, I don't particularly indulge in cocaine. It's not my thing, but I'm not gonna rail on Johnny Depp there for what he does. But Thank you. Thank you. But I guess what I'm getting at is they were attacking his character, and they were saying all this stuff, Johnny Depp's this, Johnny Depp's that. But at the root of it, was Johnny Depp a wife beater? Was he emotionally, physically, verbally, anything abusive? And it came out at the end of the trial that they found Johnny Depp not guilty. So finally, it was one of the first instances I've seen where a man has been exonerated from something involving a woman. And be that good or bad, my view on him has changed a little bit because now I understand that Johnny Depp isn't Captain Jack Sparrow. He's not Edward Scissorhands. He's a flawed human being, right? And we all have flaws, and we all have demons, and we all have ghosts, and we all have problems. We all have things that we internally struggle with every day. And he dealt with a woman who took a shit on his bed and then blamed dogs for it. You said you didn't watch, but I
heard about that. That was all over the
I know what my dog shit looks like because I pick it up all the time. That wasn't dog shit, man. That was human shit. But what I'm getting at here, John, is we finally have an instance where a man not only was believed, but he got justice. Well, the justice that he could get. And when you saw the Johnny Depp outcome, did it give you hope at all for not just your situation, but for men in general?
Well, in the time since all of my stuff happened and up until right now, I've been asked, by different groups. I've spoken on a couple of these things, like that are in England, where this is apparently a very pressing problem. I had no idea about our brothers across the pond, how life was for them over there, or I was part of a case study through a doctoral student over there, and I don't know that it gives me a ton of hope. I don't think there's any circumstances where tens of millions of dollars are going to find their way to my bank account, unfortunately. But what it did, I think, continued to tell me to, stand on the person I am, stand on, the things that I believe to be true about myself. You watch SVU enough, they'll tell you there's no such thing as a perfect victim. And I'm a huge SVU fan.
Ice-T, baby.
He is an underrated character. But like I said, I don't know that it gave me so much hope as I was happy to see, like, if I would pick up the paper tomorrow and read, somebody else is going through what I went through, true or not, that's a feeling I wouldn't wish on anybody else. It's a situation I wouldn't want anybody, true or otherwise, to find themselves in, male or female, because, your life is irreparably changed, as you go through it. And I think, mine, the trajectory of my life has changed, whether that's for better or worse. And I hope there's some positive lessons to extract from this. But I don't know that I'm hopeful as a result of it. I'll tell you what it was, as the reports would come out, and it seemed like that trial lasted, it felt like it lasted a year. I don't know what it was in the public eye for, here in the spring, but it felt like it was a really, really long time. I really couldn't listen to much of it. A lot of it sounded eerily familiar. A lot of it, dredged up some things I didn't want to talk about or didn't want to feel. It exposed some raw emotions. But I know that from watching that, that everybody wants to believe that the worst of people when you find it out. And I'm guilty of that even in my life still, even though I try to make a better effort than that. An effort to be better than that now. Everybody wants to believe that the worst in people is going to happen. And, I hope what it's done for everybody is cause a little bit of pause. The money's great. It's an astronomical figure. Many of us will never touch that much money. But for men, and maybe men in different situations that I'm in, or even women, listed as the aggressor in different situations that I'm in, the truth comes out. And I think, that people just need to be judged on things that are factual. And I eventually was formally judged on things that were factual and not. And I hope that comes out for everybody else. I don't think I can change the world, in the way people think, no more than anybody else can. But I hope that, again, if a situation like that occurs, and the stats tell us it's going to occur much more frequently, that something factual is the basis of that. But, you hear all different types of situations where, people watch a movie or read something or see something, and it dredges up some feelings they had, and I know that that's very true. And I'd never experienced that before in my life. I'd never experienced a situation where hearing something on TV or reading something, had put me right back into a place that mentally I didn't want to be in.
Well, see, I don't agree with you when you said something there. You said you don't think you can change the world. I think that the world is a subjective term. So you might not change the entire world, but you could change one person's world, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and that, I feel, is more impactful than anything. Because through your story, you've changed so many people's perception of not just you, but also situations that they put themselves in. Maybe a young man that you came into contact with now knows the value of who to surround himself with. Maybe you might not have changed, North America, South America, the Asias, the Europes, all that, but you might have changed one young man's world, and that could in turn change other people's lives. It's that trickle-down effect. We talked about Dave Ramsey earlier. He has that snowball effect, right? When he talks about eliminate that debt, so then it snowballs into the bigger. You've had that Dave Ramsey effect almost, in where you've changed perception and you've changed the way that people view things. Just real, like an example right here, seeing what you went through and seeing the strength that you may have, I don't know behind closed doors what you were like, but whenever you talk to me, you portrayed strength, right? And in my life, that showed me, there were times when I just wanted to quit, man, stuff going on at my job, or maybe something with Wyatt wasn't going right, and I felt like I was failing. Mm-hmm. But hey, if John's going through this, and the whole world's against him, but he's persevering, I need to apply that to my life. So what if I had a bad day at work? You know what? I'm going to come back stronger. Okay, Wyatt can't do this. Guess what? I'm going to make sure he's comfortable. I'm going to make sure that his life is the best it can be, because now I know what strength is like, because I'm talking to a man who could just say, fuck this. You know what I mean? I'm going to go in the corner and I'm going to hide. But you didn't. And that changed parts of my world. And that's something that I can thank you for, because you helped. And your situation, an unfortunate one, helped shape perceptions of my life going forward. I mean, we've had conversations, and you helped me. And that's something that, I think anyone should be able to hang their hat on and be proud of. When you can affect someone in that way, so profoundly, that you change their whole perception on something, I think that's better than changing the world, because you're changing everyone's mind at one point and they interpret it one way. But when you can change one person's mind and affect them in such a way that their outlook changes, I can portray that to a coworker maybe, and then that coworker sees what I'm doing, and then he changes his or her mind, and then that person can change someone else's life. It's that snowball effect, man. So it's a great thing that you were able to not only deal with the bullshit, but analyze it in such a way that now you can apply it to other parts of your life and go forward and be stronger because of it. It's truly speaks to not just your character and who you are as a man, but your value system. And I mean, it's just a really great thing to see. And I'm thankful that you accepted to come onto our show and talk about something in a very candid way, because I feel like some people want to dance around the issue, and I don't feel like that lends itself well to the situation that you were in. I mean, proverbially attack it. Get your shit out there. Talk about it. And, it's just one of those things where now we're in a world where, like Anthony said earlier, everything you do is under that microscope, right? Everyone's got their camera on, man. Everyone's got their camera on, right? And we got 4 on.
Will live
forever.
What you do now, and everyone in the future, what you do now will live forever on the internet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every post, tweet, share, like, that will forever live on the internet. You are essentially writing your biography or an autobiography whenever you do anything online.
So write
you
a
have to
fucking
be
good one.
You have to be very, very, very mindful of what the fuck you post, what you. My wife actually yells at me about this a lot, because I am not one to hold my tongue online.
Nope.
And I get into a lot of Facebook beefs.
I do too. Them community groups, man, that's addicting.
Look, let me tell you, I've been deleted, blocked by so many people. And here's the thing: I would never delete or block anybody because they have an opposing view. I honestly engage in a lot of those conversations to really get a better understanding of their point of view, because I really want them to engage with me, because I want to understand their point of view. But I also want them to hear and understand my point of view as well. And if we can come to some kind of common ground on a lot of things, it's better. But I usually end up being blocked, is what it comes down to.
That's one of my guilty pleasures, man, are them community groups.
So great.
Back when I was the head coach at Edgewood, there was a guy, he actually called Steve Cray and complained. I was talking about my hometown, and, one of the steel plants had left, and there were some things with the pension, and it really, much of Canton never rebounded from this, this place leaving or ceasing operations. And that's all I said was, what are we going to do? Put these people in a situation where they're dependent upon this, and then it leaves, and then what? We've got 20,000 people without any money. Then what do we do with it? How do we feed them? How do they feed themselves? And he called Steve, said he was going to drive up here and fight me. Steve was like, "You got to knock it off." And, but I really like I always thought like I was in the people business. Like as an educator, as a coach, whatever I've ever done. Even when I was a corrections officer at a jail, I always thought I was in the people business. And I love to see how other people think, live, and act. And like, during the COVID lockdowns, for example, I would, you couldn't leave the state of Ohio. Although Erie was closer, we drive to Cleveland and look at different neighborhoods and some of the architecture and just see how people watch. Like, there's nothing else you could do. So I went and did that. And like, I really nerd out on that kind of stuff. And, this does it from the palm of my hand and my cell phone. But I really do enjoy, seeing other people's perspective because, like we talked about just off
Absolutely.
camera. The more I learn, the more I'm convinced I know nothing. I think that was Voltaire that said that, and that's something that I've really, I think I'm naturally curious, and I try to learn, just as much stuff as I can. Like I just learned that rabbits can't throw up, and I'll be sure to drop that fact on a lot of people in my daily interactions. So, I mean, I'm always trying to pay attention and always trying to learn things, and I think some of the best teachers are people that aren't tasked with being a teacher. You see how, some and of the infinite possibilities, different people think about or react to things. In my area right now, there's a lot of, community gathering in my home area right now, over the Jalen Walker thing. And I follow that pretty heavily. And, I guess it's a little bit more intriguing because it's in Akron, which is right up the road. But even when it was those different places all throughout the United States or throughout the world, I shouldn't say I enjoy, but I really learn a lot from those kind of situations because some of those aren't enjoyable situations, but I enjoy the opportunity to learn about them.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Well, I think that we've covered it.
Hey,
Yeah,
I think it needs to be said though, this has been an absolute emotional roller coaster being here. First of all, it was like 90 degrees in here when we cut the fans off. We had the death of a pet. We've spent about 2 hours together.
This is wild.
I mean,
for our first podcast.
What the fuck?
Jim Valvano used to say you should laugh, cry, and all of that in one day. That's a heck of a day. I mean, this has been a heck of an evening.
Well, John, we appreciate you having.
We do.
Appreciate having you.
I appreciate being the pilot again, and I hope. I wish you guys all kinds of success, and and I hope that you get a chance to get very interesting people on here, and I'm sure I'll be a follower of this, and I'll go home and like, subscribe, and hit the notification button like any great TikToker or YouTube sensation says.
You'll probably rewatch it and be like, man, I should have said this.
No, I tell you where all the views will come from. It'll be from my daughter. She likes that she thinks her dad is famous. She'll watch these things and quiz me on the things that I had to say. But of course I'll watch it. Yeah, oh yeah, she'll flex on the haters. Like when she was named Student of the Month. That's what I get to go home to. So
hell yeah.
But seriously, I mean, this is a great first time, and I think it's really a unique thing as podcasting takes off, and I can't wait to see the guests you guys have coming in the future, and I hope I'm just a good measuring stick. There's a coach down in Columbus, when I was on a different podcast, he kind of came at me and he wanted to talk views, and he said I was giving out extra credit in the classroom because my view count was higher than his. So, we're competitive in everything that we do, and but I enjoy doing these things. I really, support the people I care about's ventures in their lives.
Hey, we'll definitely have you back, man. I mean, shit. We got what, 7 lined up, including this one?
Yeah, we got more to come.
We got more to come.
Yeah, we got some interesting people.
So next week, episode 2, will be coming out. We are going to have J.R. Tubbs, owner of the Lonesome Rose Tattoo Studio in Geneva, Ohio, coming in. Former owner of True to Death Tattoo out in Ashtabula on Main Avenue. Look forward to seeing him. It's going to be a pretty interesting show as tattoo cultures become very prevalent in the mainstream. I mean, I have quite a few. I mean, you can probably see it right there and all over. But looking forward to having him. We want to thank John again for coming on our show. So thank you very much, John.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So again, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, throw a comment in there. My name's Tom Roth. I got Anthony Aquendo over there. John Butchko. We're signing off. Thank you guys very much. Have a good night.
All right.